welcome back to the deep dive.
Oh.
This time, we're
Yeah.
tackling child development research
Uh-huh.
using Lorraine Nadelman's research manual in child development.
Okay.
So get ready.
Yeah.
We're going to unlock some secrets about how these little minds work.
Yeah. We have a lot to unpack in this one.
I know, me too.
It'll be fun.
Before we jump into observing kids in action and all that good stuff,
Yeah.
maybe we can talk about how researchers even approach
Right.
studying something as complex as a child's mind.
Yeah.
It's not like measuring height or
No.
weight,
Exactly.
It's a little more complicated.
It's way more abstract, right?
Right.
It's not a tangible thing.
Yeah.
But that's where the beauty of scientific inquiry comes in.
Okay.
It all starts with observations.
Okay.
Really simple observations, like noticing a toddler is fascinated by putting things in and out of containers.
Yeah, so basic.
Basic.
But I bet there are some big theories
They're just theories.
lurking behind that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That observation could lead a researcher to ask, why do they do that?
Right.
And then they might hypothesize that it has to do with, understanding object permanence, which is the idea that things exist even when we can't see them.
Oh, so that's why peekaboo is so
you-
important.
Yeah.
It all makes sense now.
The classic peekaboo game now has a whole new
Right.
meaning and theoretical background.
Yeah. So how do researchers actually test these hypotheses though?
So that's where research methods come into play.
Okay.
To test that idea, they might design an experiment
Okay.
where they hide a toy under a blanket
Uh-huh.
and observe if the toddler searches for it.
Right.
And then based on the results, they refine their understanding of object permanence.
Got it.
So you start with this simple observation.
Yeah.
And then you form this question.
Right.
And then you test it out and you get more information.
Yeah. Okay. So even seemingly simple observations can unlock these complex
Right.
processes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is kind of a question that has always baffled me.
Okay.
How do you measure something abstract like anxiety in a child?
Yeah.
You can't exactly put it on a scale.
It's one of the biggest challenges in psychological research.
Yeah.
Um,
It's got to be tough.
we use something called an operational definition,
Okay.
which essentially is translating abstract concepts into measurable behaviors.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of just saying a child is anxious,
Right.
you might measure things like fidgeting or changes in heart rate.
Okay. So you're finding these clever ways to quantify those internal states.
Exactly.
But it makes sense that researchers need to be super precise with this stuff,
Yeah,
especially with something as dynamic as child behavior.
absolutely.
Does that mean there are different ways to actually measure things?
You're catching on quickly.
Okay.
Yes, there are different ways to measure things.
Okay.
Nadelman describes different types of measurement scales,
Okay.
and they all serve different purposes. So think of how we categorize a child's temperament.
Huh.
We might use what are called nominal scales to categorize them as easy, difficult, or slow to warm up based on their typical behavior patterns.
Oh, those categories sound familiar from all the
Yeah.
parenting books I read.
Yeah.
Okay, so nominal scales are putting things into neat little boxes, they're either this or that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What are some of the other scales?
We also have ordinal scales,
Okay.
which are all about ranking.
Okay.
So think about a race,
Uh-huh.
first place, second place, third place.
Okay.
The order,
Right.
but not the exact difference in time between each runner.
Got it. Okay, so ordinal scales tell us the order, but not the precise difference.
Exactly.
Okay, and then what's that last type?
The last type is interval scales,
Okay.
which, as the name suggests, have equal intervals between values.
Okay.
So a classic example is temperature. The difference between 20 degrees and 30 degrees is the same as the difference between 70 degrees and 80 degrees.
Okay, that's a good way to remember it.
Yeah.
So researchers are choosing these different scales depending on what they're trying to measure.
Exactly.
It's they have different lenses to view these complex behaviors.
Exactly.
Let's get to the action now.
Okay.
How do researchers actually observe kids in their natural habitat?
Right.
It's not like they can just ask a toddler to sit still in a lab.
Absolutely right.
Right.
And that's where observational studies shine.
Okay.
One common approach is called naturalistic observation,
Okay.
where researchers become flies on the wall,
Okay.
observing kids in their natural environments,
Yeah.
like playgrounds or homes.
It's like reality TV for science.
It really is.
But those researchers must need some serious note-taking skills
Oh, yeah.
to keep up with the whirlwind of activity that is a child's world.
I know. And it can be really chaotic.
Right.
Nadelman mentions this fascinating tool, though, called sequential protocols,
Okay.
which are detailed methods for capturing the sequence and timing of behavior. Okay.
So imagine observing a mother and baby during feeding time.
Mm-hmm.
A sequential protocol might record details like baby reaches for spoon.
Okay.
Mother brings spoon to baby's mouth.
Okay.
Baby opens mouth. Baby swallows.
Wow.
And even baby smiles.
It's like choreographing a dance of interaction.
It really is.
How can we be sure, though, that different researchers are recording those behaviors consistently?
That is a great point.
Yeah.
Observer reliability is super important.
Right.
Researchers go through extensive training, and they use standardized definitions so that reaching for the spoon means the same thing to everyone observing.
Okay. It's amazing how much rigor goes into simply observing.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to appreciate, like, the hidden complexity behind all of this.
It's a lot more than meets the eye.
Yes.
There's a lot of thought that goes into it.
But while observation is great, sometimes you need to manipulate variables to really see the cause and effect.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're reading my mind.
That's where experimental studies take center stage.
Okay.
Unlike observation experiments, allow researchers to manipulate specific variables to see how they impact child behavior.
Okay. I'm all about a good experiment. Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say we're curious about how background noise affects a child's ability to focus.
Okay.
We could design an experiment where one group of children does a puzzle in a quiet room, while another group does the same puzzle in a room with music playing.
Ah, so the background noise is the variable that you're manipulating.
Exactly.
And then you measure their puzzle performance to see if there's like a difference between those groups.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
That's an example of an experiment.
Okay, so you have observation
Yes.
and you have experiments.
Exactly.
Cool.
And the way we design that experiment is crucial.
Okay.
There are different approaches, like between subjects and within subjects designs.
Okay.
So imagine you're testing a new reading program. In a between subjects design, one group of kids would use the new program, while another group sticks with the old one.
Okay.
And you're comparing their reading progress between those two groups.
That makes sense. So each kid is only experiencing one condition.
Yeah.
Either the new or the old program.
Right.
What about within subject designs?
Within subject design, all the kids experience all the conditions.
Okay.
So in our reading program example, the same group would try both the old program and the new program at different times, allowing researchers to compare their performance within each individual.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so each design kind of has its own
pros and cons.
Yeah, advantages. Cool.
Yeah.
Before you lost in the technicalities of this, I can't help but think about the ethics of conducting research with children.
Yeah.
Like, they're not exactly giving informed consent like adults are.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Ethical considerations are paramount
Yeah.
when we're studying children.
Yeah.
Parents or guardians have to be fully informed about the study before giving consent for the child to participate.
Right.
And importantly, the child also needs to assent,
Okay.
which means to agree to participate in a way that they understand.
Right. So it's all about respecting these tiny humans, even in the context of research.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. You mentioned Piaget earlier,
Yes.
and I feel like his work is kind of like the foundation of a lot of child development stuff.
He's like the godfather.
Yeah. Can you give us just like a quick recap of his stages of cognitive development?
Sure.
I vaguely remember them from Psych 101,
Absolutely.
but it's been a while.
So Piaget revolutionized how we understand children's thinking with his 4 main stages of cognitive development:
Okay.
sensoromotor,
Yeah.
pre-operational,
Okay.
concrete operational, and formal operational.
Okay.
And we'll go through each of those in detail.
Okay, cool.
Let's start with the sensoromotor stage.
Yeah.
Which is from birth to around 2 years old. This is where infants explore the world through their senses and their motor actions.
Okay.
So think of babies putting everything in their mouths.
Yeah, the world is their giant slobbery laboratory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
During this stage, they develop crucial skills like object permanence, that understanding that things exist even when out of sight.
Yeah, so before that develops, it's like the toy just disappears from existence when it's hidden.
Oof, it's gone.
Right.
And then it reappears magically.
And that's why peekaboo is so endlessly entertaining.
Exactly.
For babies.
Because it's like...
It is a magic trick for them.
Yes.
Really.
Okay, cool. So what happens after the sensori-motor stage?
Next comes the pre-operational stage.
Okay.
From around 2 to 7 years old.
Okay.
It's a time of incredible growth in symbolic thinking.
Okay.
Kids start using language. They engage in pretend play.
Yeah.
and they start to understand that symbols can represent things.
Okay.
So think of a child using a banana as a phone
Yeah.
or a block as a car. Yeah, their imaginations are on fire at this age.
They are.
It's so fun to watch them like create these little
That's
worlds.
so creative.
Yeah. I remember Piaget talking about some limitations in thinking at this stage, though.
Yes.
Right.
One of the key limitations is egocentrism.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're being selfish,
Right.
but they genuinely struggle to see things from another person's perspective.
Okay.
They assume that everyone sees the world the same way they do.
Okay, so that explains why my niece gets so frustrated when I don't understand what she's talking about.
Exactly.
Even though she hasn't actually, like, explained anything.
Yeah.
She's like,
She thinks you should know
yeah.
because she knows.
Right.
It's very logical.
Yeah, when do kids, like, start to move beyond this egocentric view?
So that leads us to the concrete operational stage,
Okay.
typically from around 7 to 11 years old.
Okay.
During this stage, children become capable of more logical and systematic thinking. They can now understand that the amount of liquid stays the same even if you pour it into a different shaped container.
Right.
A concept called conservation.
Oh, that explains why my younger nephew was convinced that the taller glass had more juice,
Exactly.
even though I just poured it from, like, a shorter, wider one.
Yeah, it's all about appearances
Yeah.
to them.
Okay, so what is the final stage in Piaget's framework?
The grand finale is the formal operational stage,
Okay.
starting around 11 years old and continuing into adulthood.
Right.
This is where abstract and hypothetical thinking emerge.
Okay.
They can think about possibilities, consider different perspectives,
Right.
and even engage in deductive reasoning.
It's like they're finally able to think outside the box, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. They can think beyond what they can see and touch and
Right.
manipulate.
Yeah. Piaget's stages provide such a clear framework for understanding
Right.
this whole, like, cognitive development.
Yeah.
How did he actually study these stages?
So Piaget was a master observer,
Okay.
but he also designed some brilliant experiments to test his ideas.
Okay.
And in fact, Nadelman's manual highlights several of these classic experiments,
Cool.
each one giving us a peek into how children think and learn.
Okay. Now we're talking. I'm ready to see these experiments in action. What's first on our list?
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Okay. I am so ready to see some of these experiments in action after that overview.
Oh, yeah.
Where do we start?
Let's kick things off with experiment 1,
Yeah.
which is age and sex differences in 2 reaction time tasks.
Okay.
And this one looks at how quickly children react to different stimuli,
Okay.
which gives us a window into their speed of their mental processing.
It's amazing how something as simple as reaction time can reveal so much
I know, right?
about cognitive development.
Yeah, it seems so simple,
Yeah.
but there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
So then what are the 2 types of reaction time that this experiment explores?
Okay, so this experiment explores 2 types of reaction time. The first is simple reaction time,
Okay.
which is like a sprinter reacting to a starting pistol.
Yeah.
It's a pure instinctive response.
Got it.
And then there's C reaction time,
Okay.
which involves choice.
Okay.
So imagine our sprinter now has multiple starting signals, but they only have to run when they see a red one.
So with C reaction time, they need to evaluate the signal and make a decision before reacting.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see how that would require more complex mental processing,
A lot more.
right,
Yeah.
than just like,
A simple bang and go.
yeah. Okay, so what did they find?
Okay, so what they found was that as children get older, their reaction times for both simple and C reaction tasks got faster,
Okay.
suggesting that their brains are becoming more efficient at processing information and making decisions.
Which is crucial
Oh, yeah.
for like learning and navigating the world.
Absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like their internal wiring is getting upgraded
It is. They're
Yeah.
getting faster connections.
to allow them to like react and think more quickly.
Yeah, and the myelin is building up around their axons,
Cool.
helping with that transmission.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
What other fascinating insights can we glean from these classic experiments?
Okay, so let's move on to experiment 2,
Okay.
which is spatial perspective, taking the 3 mountains task.
Okay.
And this one is a classic illustration of Piaget's concept of egocentrism.
Egocentrism.
Yeah.
Had inability to see things from another person's perspective.
Exactly.
I remember this from our discussion of Piaget's stages.
Yes.
Okay, so remind me, how does this experiment work?
Okay, so in this experiment, a child sits at a table facing 3 model mountains,
Okay.
each with unique features, like one might have snow on top,
Okay.
one might have a little house,
Okay.
one might have a red cross,
Okay.
and then a doll is placed on the opposite side of the table.
Uh-huh.
The child is then shown different pictures of the mountain scene
Okay.
and asked to choose the picture that shows what the doll sees.
Okay, so the child needs to like mentally rotate the scene
Mm,
and take the doll's perspective.
exactly.
I bet this is where that egocentrism comes in.
This is it.
Yeah.
So younger children stuck in their egocentric viewpoint
Uh-huh.
often choose the picture that matches their own view,
Okay.
even though it's clearly not what the doll would see.
Yeah.
As they get older and their cognitive abilities mature, they become much better at taking different perspectives,
Right.
which is a crucial skill for social development, empathy, and understanding other minds.
Right, because if you can't take someone else's perspective,
Yeah,
how are you going to understand how they're feeling?
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how something as simple as like looking at a mountain scene can reveal so much
I know, it's so simple.
Yeah.
Right. So powerful.
about a child's ability to like
Yeah.
understand other perspectives.
Yeah.
What other classic experiments should we explore?
Okay, let's dive into experiment 3,
Okay.
which is false belief in children's theory of mind.
Ooh, theory of mind.
Yeah.
That's like having a mental model of what's going on in other people's heads.
Exactly.
And that seems so fundamental
It is
to human interaction.
one of the most fundamental things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does this experiment test that?
So this experiment uses a clever task called the false belief task.
Okay.
So imagine you show a child a box of crayons, but when they open it, it's full of candles.
Okay.
Then you introduce a puppet
Uh-huh.
and ask the child, what will the puppet think is in the box?
Okay. I can see where this is going.
Yeah.
A child who hasn't developed theory of mind will say the puppet will think there are candles in the box.
Exactly.
Because that's what they themselves now know.
Because that's their reality.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
They haven't yet grasped that the puppet has its own belief based on its limited experience.
Right.
But as children develop theory of mind,
Uh-huh.
they realize the puppet will falsely believe there are crayons in the box.
That's such a clever way to test something so complex.
I know, right?
It's like those kids are becoming little mind readers,
They are.
figuring out what others are thinking, even if it's wrong.
Exactly.
So cool. Okay, so we've talked about reaction time, egocentrism, theory of mind. What other like cognitive skills does Nadelman explore in her manual?
Okay, so attention and memory are two cognitive abilities that are crucial throughout life.
Okay.
Let's start with experiment 4,
Okay.
which is age and sex differences in interference proneness.
Okay.
And this one uses a modified version of the strip color word test
Okay.
to examine how children develop the ability to control their attention.
Ah, the Stroop test. I remember that one.
Yeah.
You have to name the color of the ink, not the word itself.
Right.
And it's surprisingly difficult.
It is so hard.
How do they adapt this for children, though?
So instead of words, they use color patches with X's on them.
Okay.
The child needs to name the color of the patch while ignoring the distracting X's.
Okay, so their brains are trying to, like, filter out the noise and focus on the signal.
Exactly. And as you might expect, younger children are more easily distracted by those X's.
Right.
But as they get older, they become better at focusing on the target color and ignoring irrelevant information.
It makes sense that our attentional filters get more refined as our brains develop.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a muscle.
What other attention experiments are there?
Okay, so experiment 5.
Okay.
Age task and congruence effects in a picture word semantic interference task.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is.
Okay.
Um,
It takes us deeper into how children process the meaning of words and images.
ooh, semantics. I'm sensing a connection to language development here.
You are spot on.
Okay.
This experiment looks at how word reading and picture labeling are affected by something called semantic interference.
Okay.
Basically, when the meaning of one thing interferes with how we process another.
Okay.
So imagine you're shown a picture of a dog.
Okay.
In the congruent condition, you either read the word dog or say dog to label the picture.
Okay, so the word and the picture match.
Exactly.
Okay.
No problem there.
Yeah. What happens in the incongruent condition?
Okay.
Imagine you see that same picture of a dog,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to read the word cat
Okay.
or label a picture of a cat by saying dog.
So the meanings clash.
They clash,
Yeah.
creating interference.
Okay, I can see how that would be tricky because our brains are wired to make connections.
Totally.
Right, so
Associations.
those conflicting meanings would create a mental hiccup.
They would.
Yeah. Okay, what did they find?
So what's fascinating is that younger children have a much harder time with this incongruent condition,
Okay.
especially when labeling pictures,
Okay.
it takes them longer to respond because their semantic processing is still developing.
So it's like their brains are working harder
They are working so hard.
to reconcile those conflicting meanings.
Yeah,
And as they mature, those like semantic networks become more robust,
exactly.
allowing them to handle those complexities more smoothly.
More efficiently.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Okay. Um,
So we've talked about attention. Let's shift gears to memory.
Okay.
Experiment 6.
Okay.
The development of recall and clustering
All right.
explores a key memory strategy, clustering, which is the ability to organize information into meaningful groups to remember it better.
Oh, clustering. That makes sense.
Right.
It's like creating mental file folders
Yes.
for our memories.
Love that analogy.
Okay, so how does this experiment actually work?
This experiment uses a free recall task,
Okay.
where children are presented with a list of items
Uh-huh.
and then asked to recall as many as they can in any order.
Okay.
And then the researchers look at how many items they recall and how they group those items during recall.
Okay, so if they remember apple, banana, pear all together,
Exactly.
that would be a sign of clustering.
They're grouping those fruits together.
Right, based on their category.
Exactly, based on a shared category.
Okay, and what did they find?
So they found that older children are better at both recall and clustering than younger children.
Okay, so our ability to like organize information and store it in our memory banks gets more sophisticated.
It does.
As we develop.
Yeah, memory is a fascinating thing.
It is. I wish I had a better memory.
Me too.
But we've focused a lot on cognitive development so far.
Yeah.
What about the social and emotional side of things?
Yes.
How do researchers study those aspects of child development?
Right. So Nadelman's manual also explores various aspects of social development,
Okay.
from gender roles to sibling relationships, even aggression.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive into the social side of child development.
Okay.
What's the first stop on our social exploration?
Let's start with a topic that's both complex and constantly evolving:
Okay.
gender identity.
You okay?
Nadelman includes an experiment called Sex Identity and Preferences for Sex-Typed Material
Yep.
that looks at how children perceive themselves in relation to gender roles and stereotypes.
It's amazing how these like deep-rooted societal ideas about gender can impact even young children.
It's incredible.
So how did this experiment study gender identity?
So the researchers showed children pictures of objects or activities typically associated with boys or girls,
Uh-oh.
like trucks, dolls, sports equipment, cooking utensils,
Uh-huh.
and they assessed the children's preferences for these sex-typed items.
Okay, so they were looking at whether children gravitate towards the toys and activities that align with traditional gender roles?
Exactly.
Okay.
And they also explored whether children remember more of the items associated with their own gender.
Okay, and what did they find?
And as you might expect, the findings often reflect the influence of societal norms and expectations.
Right.
Children, especially younger ones, tend to show a preference for items that align with those stereotypes.
Okay, it's a little disheartening, but not surprising given like the constant bombardment of gender stereotypes that kids face
Yeah,
from a young age.
from such a young age.
Like in toys, clothes, media, even in the way adults interact with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pervasive.
It is okay, so these findings really highlight the powerful role that socialization plays in shaping a child's understanding of gender.
Huge.
Yeah. It's a reminder of the importance of challenging those stereotypes.
Yes.
And creating more inclusive environments where kids feel free to explore a wider range of interests,
Absolutely.
regardless of their gender.
Regardless of their gender.
Yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's about encouraging individuality and like allowing kids to break free from those limiting boxes.
I love that.
What other social dynamics does Nadelman explore?
Okay, so sibling relationships offer a rich landscape for research.
Okay.
Nadelman presents an experiment that examines the fascinating interplay of cooperation and competition between siblings.
Sibling relationships, that's a dynamic I know all too well
Oh, yeah.
from my own childhood.
I bet.
So what kind of game did they use in this experiment?
Okay, so they cleverly adapted the classic game of scissors, paper, rock,
Okay.
framing it within a prisoner's dilemma paradigm.
Okay. I need a quick refresher on the prisoner's dilemma.
Okay.
It's one of those classic game theory scenarios.
It is?
Right. We're like,
It's where two individuals acting in their own self-interest may not choose the best outcome for both of them.
okay.
So in this adapted version of scissors, paper, rock, siblings are paired up
Uh-huh.
and have to choose their weapon without knowing their sibling's choice.
So there's strategy involved.
There's strategy.
Yeah, and like a bit of sibling rivalry thrown in.
And the sibling rivalry element is key.
Yeah.
Because they want to beat their sibling.
Of course.
Right.
Especially if you're the younger sibling. You're always trying to like
one up them.
prove yourself.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so how does this relate to like cooperation and competition?
So the game is designed so that certain combinations lead to different point outcomes.
Okay.
So for example, if both siblings choose paper, they both get a moderate number of points,
Okay.
a cooperative outcome.
So they both win, essentially.
They both win. But if one chooses scissors and the other chooses paper, the one who chose scissors gets a big win,
Uh-huh.
while the other sibling loses points.
Okay,
It's
so
a competitive outcome.
there's an incentive to try and like,
Outsmart your sibling.
yeah, outsmart your sibling, go for that big win.
Exactly.
Did they find any differences between how boys and girls approach this game?
Interestingly, yes.
Okay.
Boys, particularly younger ones, tend to lean towards those competitive strategies,
Okay.
going for those big wins, even if it means their sibling loses.
So they're all about like that individual victory.
They want the glory.
Okay, what about the girls?
Girls, on the other hand, often demonstrate more cooperative tendencies,
Okay.
choosing strategies that benefit both of them, even if it means sacrificing a potential individual win.
So they're like prioritizing harmony and fairness over individual victory.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder how those early patterns of interaction might like shape sibling relationships down the line.
Right. It highlights the importance of understanding these early social dynamics
Right.
and fostering environments where siblings can learn to navigate those complexities in healthy and positive ways.
Yeah, absolutely. These insights into sibling dynamics are so fascinating.
It's so interesting, right?
It's a reminder that even our closest relationships
Mm-hmm.
can involve this like delicate dance of cooperation and competition.
Absolutely. We're constantly negotiating
Yeah.
those dynamics.
What other social behaviors does Nadelman's manual delve into?
Okay, so our next experiment tackles a topic that's both sensitive and unfortunately common in childhood,
Okay.
aggression.
Okay.
The experiment is called Pipes of Aggression and Their Correlates.
Okay.
And it explores the different forms aggression can take
Okay.
and the factors that might contribute to aggressive behavior in children.
Aggression is a topic that often evokes strong reactions.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear how this experiment even approached something so complex.
So the researchers recognized that aggression isn't a one-size-fits-all concept.
Right.
They looked at different types,
Right.
including physical aggression,
Okay, like hitting or kicking.
hitting, kicking, biting,
Got it.
verbal aggression,
Like name-calling threats.
name-calling, threats, yelling,
Okay.
and relational aggression.
Relational aggression that rings a bell.
Yes.
Remind me what that looks like.
So think of behaviors like spreading rumors, excluding someone from a group, giving someone the silent treatment.
Okay, so it's a more like social form of aggression
Yeah.
that aims to damage someone's relationships or their social standing.
Exactly.
It's like the social manipulation game.
It is.
And I imagine it can be just as hurtful, if not more so, than physical aggression.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes even more so.
Yeah.
Because it's that social isolation.
Right.
And that rejection.
Which can really stick with you.
It can be brutal.
Yeah. What did they find in terms of like gender differences?
So interestingly, they've found some gender differences in how these types of aggression manifest.
Oh.
Boys, as we saw in the previous experiment, are more likely to resort to physical aggression, while girls are more prone to using relational aggression.
It's fascinating how these social patterns emerge so early on.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that these are general trends.
Of course.
Yeah. And individual differences play a huge role.
Of course.
So we're talking about tendencies, not putting people in rigid categories.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So this experiment underscores the importance of like recognizing those different forms of aggression.
Yes.
Understanding the underlying motivations and social context that drive them.
It's not just about punishing aggression.
Right.
It's about understanding where it comes from.
It's a behavior to be understood, not just punished.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. What other challenging social issues does Nadelman's research address?
So let's delve into an issue that's unfortunately intertwined with aggression.
Okay.
Bullying.
Okay.
The experiment, the bullying circle, understanding roles and dynamics,
Okay.
explores the roles of bully victim and bystander.
Bullying is such a heartbreaking issue,
It is.
and it can have such a lasting impact on children.
Oh, absolutely.
How do they even study something so complex in a research setting?
So, this experiment often involves observing children in controlled environments,
Right.
like classrooms or playgrounds.
Uh-huh.
The researchers create scenarios where one child has more power or social influence than others,
Okay.
and then observe how those power dynamics unfold.
It's like creating a microcosm of those social hierarchies that exist in the real world.
Exactly, a little mini society, this
Yeah.
study.
So it's about understanding the factors that contribute to bullying, like the personalities involved, the role of peer groups,
Yeah,
and like the impact of adult intervention.
absolutely. All those factors.
Okay, and what do they find?
So, their observations often reveal some consistent patterns.
Okay.
Bullies tend to crave power and control.
Uh-huh.
They use aggression to assert dominance.
Okay, what about the victims?
Victims are often perceived as different or weaker,
Okay.
either physically or socially. They might be shy, anxious, or have difficulty asserting themselves.
It's sad to think that those who are already struggling socially are often targeted.
I know, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. What about the role of bystanders?
Ah, the silent witnesses.
Yeah.
They might not be the aggressors, but their silence can be just as damaging.
Right.
The experiment explores how bystanders might contribute to the problem, either through passive acceptance
Okay.
or even active encouragement of the bully's behavior.
It's a stark reminder that we all have a responsibility to speak up against bullying
Absolutely.
and create a culture of respect and kindness.
Yeah.
This experiment really shines a light on the complex interplay of individual factors, social dynamics, and environmental influences.
Well, that was it.
Yeah, that contribute to bullying.
Yeah,
It's a call to action, create more inclusive and supportive environments for all children.
absolutely, for everyone.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Okay, this exploration of bullying has been sobering,
It is a heavy topic.
but it's crucial to understand these dynamics if we want to create positive change.
Absolutely, knowledge is power.
What other aspects of social development are highlighted in Nadelman's research?
Okay, so our final experiment for this section dives into social cognition,
Okay.
which is how we think about ourselves and others.
Social cognition. I love that term. It sounds so sophisticated.
I know, right?
Okay, so what does this specific experiment reveal about social perspective taking?
Okay, so imagine you show a child a picture of another child who is crying.
Okay.
The child is then asked to explain why they think the other child is crying.
Okay.
This simple task can reveal a lot about their ability to step outside their own perspective.
Okay, I bet younger children really struggle with this.
They do,
Yeah.
because they're still developing that ability to see things from another person's point of view.
Right.
So younger children often focus on the most obvious external reasons.
Okay.
They might say the other child's crying because they fell down or lost a toy.
Okay, so they're attributing the crying to a physical event
Exactly.
rather than an emotional state.
Rather than an internal feeling.
Okay. But as children develop, they become more adept at taking on different perspectives and considering the other person's internal thoughts and feelings.
Exactly.
Okay, so they might say the child is crying because they're sad, disappointed, or frustrated.
Right.
It's like they're becoming more attuned to the emotional landscape of others.
Absolutely.
What a fascinating journey into the world of social cognition.
I know, right? It's incredible how much development happens
Yeah,
in those early years. Welcome back to the deep dive. Ready for the last part of our exploration?
I'm ready to keep diving in. It's
Yeah.
amazing how much ground we've covered already.
Oh, yeah. We've gone from those basic research methods all the way to those fascinating experiments on social development.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm seeing childhood with like a whole new perspective.
Absolutely. It's like we're peeling back the layers of that onion.
Yeah, what other areas of child development can we explore?
Let's turn our attention to language acquisition. Oh, okay. How do those adorable babbles and coos turn into these sophisticated communication skills we use every day? It's remarkable.
Right. It really is a remarkable feat.
I remember being so amazed by how quickly my niece went from pointing and grunting to stringing together full sentences.
Yeah, it happens so fast.
It does. How do researchers even begin to study something as intricate as language development?
Well, Nadelman's manual has this experiment called Early Language Development, exploring word comprehension and production.
Okay.
Researchers use a combination of techniques to assess children's language abilities.
Okay, so what do those look like?
So, for example, they might show children pictures of objects,
Okay.
and ask them to name the object,
Okay.
or point to the matching picture when they hear the words spoken aloud.
So it's about assessing like both their ability to produce the word and their understanding of the word's meaning.
Exactly, hitting both sides of that coin.
Yeah, and I imagine there's a lot of variation in how quickly kids develop these skills.
Oh, absolutely. Every child develops their own pace. Right.
Right.
But the research does reveal some general trends.
Okay, so what are some of the things they found?
Well, early on, children typically understand many more words than they can actually say.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like they're building up this mental library of words
Right.
before they have the motor skills and vocal control to express them all.
It's like they're soaking up language like sponges even before they can fully articulate it.
They're little sponges. Absolutely.
What else did they learn about those early stages of language development?
They also explored how children learn different types of words.
Okay.
Like nouns, verbs, adjectives,
Okay.
and how they begin to combine those words into simple phrases and sentences.
Okay.
It's like they're piecing together the building blocks of language,
Right.
one word at a time,
Yeah.
gradually constructing more and more complex expressions.
It's fascinating to think about those early conversations we have with children.
I know, right?
Even those like simple exchanges of pointing and labeling objects.
Those interactions seem so crucial
They are crucial.
to laying the foundation for their language skills.
Absolutely. Every interaction is a learning opportunity.
Right.
A chance for them to expand their vocabulary, refine their grammar,
Yeah.
and develop those communication skills.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
This whole exploration of language development has given me like a newfound appreciation for the complexity of language
I know. Right.
and the incredible journey that children go through to become fluent communicators.
Yeah. We take it for granted.
We do.
Yeah.
So what other fascinating topics does Nadelman dive into?
Let's shift our focus to moral reasoning.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do children develop a sense of right and wrong, fairness and justice?
Right. It's a big question.
It's a question that I feel like is especially relevant today.
It is always relevant,
Yeah.
but especially today.
So I'm really curious to hear how Nadelman approaches this topic.
Okay. So the experiment is called Moral Reasoning, Exploring Children's Judgments of Right and Wrong. It uses hypothetical scenarios to delve into children's understanding of moral dilemmas.
So what kind of scenarios are we talking about?
For example, they might present a story about a child who steals food to feed their hungry family.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Right.
You're pitting like the rule of not stealing against the basic human need for food?
Exactly. It's a classic dilemma.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear how children of different ages would approach that.
Well, that's exactly what the research explores.
Okay.
And as you might expect, there are developmental differences in how children reason about these situations.
Okay.
Younger children tend to focus on concrete outcomes and obedience to authority.
Okay.
So if the child in the story gets caught stealing, they might say it was wrong because stealing is against the rules.
So for them, it's very black and white.
Yeah, rules are rules.
Yeah.
And they don't see the nuances yet.
Okay.
But as they mature, their thinking becomes more nuanced.
Okay.
They start to consider the intentions behind the actions, the needs of others, and even broader societal values.
So it's like their moral compass becomes more calibrated.
Exactly.
Recognizing that sometimes there are gray areas where the rules might not always apply.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, this evolution in moral reasoning seems so important
It is really important.
to like engage kids in conversations about these complex issues.
Absolutely.
It's about helping them develop critical thinking skills and fostering empathy and compassion.
Right. It's not just about right and wrong.
Right, it's about understanding the why behind those judgments.
Exactly.
Moral development isn't just about teaching kids a set of rules.
No.
It's about guiding them as they grapple with those big questions
Right.
of right and wrong
Exactly.
and navigate those ethical dilemmas that they encounter in the world.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to the last experiment for this deep dive.
Okay, sounds good.
What have we got?
So this one explores pro-social behavior.
Ooh, I love that we're ending on such a positive note.
I know, right?
I'm always so inspired by the acts of kindness and generosity that I see in even the youngest of children.
Oh, me too.
How do they study those heartwarming behaviors?
So the experiment is called The Roots of Kindness, Exploring Pro-Social Behavior in Children.
Okay.
And it uses a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
Researchers might observe children in natural settings,
Okay.
looking for those spontaneous acts of sharing, helping, or comforting.
Okay.
They might also create scenarios where children have an opportunity to assist someone in need,
Okay.
like an adult struggling to carry something.
So it's about like capturing those everyday moments of kindness and also creating opportunities for children to choose to act pro-socially.
Exactly. Giving them a chance to shine.
Yeah. So what did they find? What insights did they glean from all these observations?
Well, they found that children are more likely to engage in pro-social behavior when they feel a sense of connection with the person they're helping.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, for example, they might be more inclined to help someone they know and like, or someone they perceive as similar to themselves.
It's easier to tap into our empathy when we see ourselves reflected in the other person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, the experiment also highlights the crucial role that adults play in shaping these behaviors.
Okay.
Children who observe adults behaving pro-socially are more likely to do so themselves.
Right. It's a powerful reminder that we can cultivate kindness in children by setting a good example
Absolutely.
and creating environments where those behaviors are valued and encouraged.
Right.
Like that saying, children learn what they live.
Exactly.
By nurturing those seeds of kindness and empathy, we can help create like a ripple effect of compassion.
I love that. A ripple effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That spreads outward and shapes a more caring and supportive world.
For everyone.
This has been such an incredible journey through child development research.
It has been really fun.
We've covered so much. Yeah. From the fundamentals of scientific inquiry to those complexities of language morality and pro-social behavior.
I know it's been a whirlwind.
It has, but I feel like I've gained like a whole new understanding of how children learn, grow, and make sense of the world.
Me too.
So a huge thank you to Lorraine Nadelman for her insightful research manual.
Oh, yeah. Amazing book.
It's an incredible resource for anyone who's curious about these amazing little minds.
Absolutely.
So for all of you listening, we encourage you to keep observing and learning from the children in your lives.
Yeah.
Never lose that sense of wonder and curiosity about how they develop and thrive.
Absolutely.
So until next time, keep diving deep.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Your support helps us keep creating valuable content like this. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Join our community for more insights into psychology and personal development. Let's grow and learn together. See you in the next video.